All right, everybody has their notes out. We're ready to begin? So, once again, today's objective is for you to illustrate what pathogens are and to display examples of what pathogens there are that affect human beings and what diseases they cause. Today is the first day of the immune system, the last section of our Unit 5 Anatomy and Physiology. 1 week from today, you will be taking a test, a formative, on all of the parts of the Anatomy and Physiology learning segment. That includes the nervous system. What else? Skeletal, digestive, circulatory, muscular, respiratory, all those and more. I'll give you guys a study guide for that tomorrow for you to go and start working on it over the weekend so that you are going to be completely prepared for that test 1 week from today. Also, in the immune system, our last chapter, on what page? 1074, that's the last chapter in our book. So, read that over the weekend, prepare your weekend homework, and you will be prepared for the quiz we take on the immune system next week. So first off, I asked you guys in Daily Catalyst, what are pathogens? What did you guys put down? Worms are a good example, bacteria, viruses. You guys have lots of ideas. But what is a pathogen to you? They're invaders that cause diseases. These are things, both living and non-living, that come into your body and they multiply. They grow. And they turn your body into food. So they can make more of them inside of you. And there are 6 different types of pathogens that we're going to learn about today. What is probably one of the most common ones, Alex? Viruses. Excellent. Viruses are one. How about another? Bacteria. So bacteria and viruses are probably the 2 biggies. The ones that probably are the most diverse are the ones that we are most often concerned about, especially here in North America. But there are other ones too. Can you think of another type of pathogen? Drake?
Parasites.
Parasites. Excellent. I'll give that call on you again in a moment because I've got some more about parasites I want to talk about. There's some other ones too. Fungi. Oh, you read my mind.
I didn't even know.
Yes. It's not a fun time when you've got fungi. The other ones you probably have never heard about. I'll just go ahead and share it with you guys. This includes, say it with me, protozoans. Protozoans means pre-animal, before there were animals. And these are very ancient creatures that are different than bacteria, fungi, and even animals themselves. They're very diverse, and yet they still comprise some of the worst pathogens out there. What about them today? Another one that we've only discovered rather recently is called prions. In fact, they were only really described about 15 years ago. When you guys were born, we were first starting to really understand what prions are and what type of diseases they cause. And the last one, Drake, what is the last one we haven't talked about yet?
Parasites.
Parasites. And not just any parasites. Do you think external parasites or ectoparasites, are they pathogens? No, not really. What's an example of an ectoparasite?
Fake worms.
External.
External? On the outside?
On the outside, yeah.
Oh, you mean like butterfly babies.
Ticks.
Excellent. Ticks. What else?
Fleas.
Fleas. Lice.
Bed bugs.
Bed bugs, excellent. Yeah, those are all external ectoparasites. But to be a pathogen, they have to go inside of you and multiply inside of you. So what do we call that group? They're not ectoparasites, they are internal parasites. These here are the 6 different pathogens I want you guys to know about. Alright, so here's what we're going to do today. I'm going to go ahead and talk about each of these in detail, and I'm going to give you guys some examples of the diseases that different types of these pathogens can cause. I want you guys to write those down and even add any more that you guys might know yourselves. You guys ready? So what again is the first one we're going to talk about? Bacteria, good. So who can tell me an example of a bacterial disease? The flu? Good guess, but that's not caused by bacteria. Shemaya? Pneumonia. You know, pneumonia can be caused by bacteria indirectly. Usually it's not.
Could it be like food poisoning?
Food poisoning, excellent example. Yeah, many different types of bacteria can cause food poisoning to us. But the first example I'm going to share with you guys today is called strep throat. Strep throat is caused by a single type of bacteria that once it gets inside of you, it finds a nice little home. Where do you think you find strep throat? In your throat. It starts to grow and asexually multiply until it builds a colony in the back of your throat. Now in the process, it produces a toxin that breaks down your skin so they can lap up all those nutrients as your skin in the back of your throat has been broken down. The strep throat can be really dangerous because that toxin, if it gets into your bloodstream, it can go to your brain and have long-lasting, permanent side effects. This is why if you have strep throat, you want to get to a doctor ASAP. Now, what type of medication could a doctor give you to kill things like bacteria? Antibiotics. Do antibiotics work on other pathogens? No, they only work on bacteria. All right, my next example is called gangrene. Now, all over your body, you've got bacteria. You've got the same type of bacteria that causes gangrene found on your skin, Nelly, or Daisy, right on your cheeks. On your arms, Anthony, you've got this bacteria all over you. But normally, it's benign. It's harmless. Until, well, the immune system falls apart, or if something damages your skin and that bacteria can get on the inside. So, what can happen if you get this bacteria inside of you? Let me show you.
Oh my God.
Yes. This individual right here probably is a type 1 diabetic, and this happens, your circulatory system starts to break down. And they probably lost circulation to their toes. When that happens, those parts of their bodies died, and that normally harmless bacteria came in and started breaking it down. Shemaya?
People get like on their feet, like kind of turn yellow and their eyes and
Different thing. Yeah. Questions? So, gangrene, what are you going to do now? I mean, when you have gangrene, what's the only way to stop this from spreading and continuing to eat more? Amputation. Fortunately, this little piggy went to the market and survived the gangrene that came on in. That's a good thing. Now, the next one that I'm going to share with you guys, next example, this was actually a bacteria that infects your lungs. And we had a big scare with this last year here at our school. Tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is spread through people who are already infected. If that bacteria catches the right current and lands in the right spot at the right time, and it gets into your lungs, this bacteria will make a little home in there. It'll breed, it'll multiply, and start to eat your lungs, building larger and larger holes until the holes are so big that the fluid from your lungs pours on in, and you eventually drown inside your own fluids.
Damn.
Pretty scary. Tuberculosis is a major concern in the world today. Now, why is that? Well, what would we use normally to kill bacteria again? Antibiotics. Well, what did we learn in Unit 4 about species changing over time? Species mutate and they evolve. Well, bacteria, just like other bigger species, also evolve and change over time. And when you're presented with something that kills you, wouldn't it be advantageous if you were a bacteria that could survive the antibiotic? Right? And sure enough, after using so many antibiotics in our world today, there are many different strains of tuberculosis that can survive our antibiotic treatments. And in many parts of the world, there is no longer a cure for tuberculosis. It used to be a death sentence. When we discovered the miracle of antibiotics, it slowly went from a deadly disease to just a pesky pain. But now it's once again becoming dangerous, and that's why we are so concerned about people who have TB and getting them treatment right away. All right, so this is bacteria. What's the next one we're going to talk about? Viruses. That's right. Now, viruses, we know lots of one. We learned about one last fall. What was the big one that was infecting people in West Africa last year? Ebola. That's a great example. I haven't put it up here. But I've got a more common one for us here in California. This is one that we tend to get every single year. It spreads around. We get shots for it to vaccinate from it. The flu. But there's a more technical name for the flu. It's called influenza. Now there's lots of different strains of influenza. You know, the common one, it kind of comes on by once a year. People get infected and they get better over it. But what happens, like in the movie Contagion, when a unique flu mutates? And it looks so different that our immune system has no idea what it's looking at. You die. In fact, influenza, though it seems harmless, can be very, very deadly. In fact, less than 100 years ago, I believe it was 1918, there was a special mutation of the flu that came out called the Spanish flu. It's a little bit different than the normal flu that comes around every year. Just a small little tweak in its DNA. But with that, it became so deadly that it became a horrific outbreak that spread across Europe and even came over here in North America. It killed, how many people? About 50 million people got and died from the Spanish flu. At the time, that was about 5% of the human population was wiped out by one tweak of the DNA of the flu. In fact, more people died from the Spanish flu than World War II, World War I, in fact, probably all wars in the last 200 years combined, from a little tweak of the DNA from the flu virus. This is why it is so important to study pathogens. and viruses. I mean, we spend so much money building aircraft carriers and missiles and bombs and bullets. But what do we really need to be scared about? Do we need to be worried about Iran and North Korea? Viruses and other pathogens. Those are the ones that are really going to kill us. Here's another example. Probably heard of this before. HIV. What is HIV? It's a sexually transmitted disease. You can get it from sex. You can get it from sharing needles. Hopefully none of you guys are using needles with each other. But you can also get it through blood transfusions as well. So HIV was a big concern back in the 90s and 80s, and it still is. HIV is still spreading throughout the world and still claiming the lives of many, many billions of people. There is no cure for HIV. There might be treatment soon. In fact, recent studies have shown that there possibly is a treatment that can cure you from HIV if you have low viral counts because you got tested early and got treatment right away. But if you wait too long, there's probably no hope for you. It's a death sentence. You guys ever heard of hepatitis B and C? Those are also very big sexually transmitted diseases that you should be worried about. Many of you guys have actually gotten vaccines for hepatitis B. Who here has gotten a vaccine for hepatitis B? A few of you? Okay. It used to be a high school requirement that you couldn't go to high school until you had hepatitis B shots, but I think they've changed the regulations, unfortunately, because that used to be something that killed a lot of people. Many hundreds of thousands throughout the world. All right, the next virus I'll talk about, you guys probably have heard of this before, not by its name. It's called HSV1. What's the more common name for HSV1? The cold sore, that's right. Now, cold sores are pretty nasty. They're basically viruses shedding, you know, like a dog how sheds its fur. All right, little hairs pop out. Viruses are actually being shed out to try to infect other people whenever you have a cold sore. But studies have actually shown recently that even if you don't have a cold sore, there's a good chance that you still are doing some viral shedding. Did you guys know that even if you've never had a cold sore, there's a good chance you still have the HSV virus? In fact, in the United States, about 90% of all people are infected with the HSV virus. Does it make you sick? Make you cough? No. It's a very sneaky pathogen. What it does is that it gets itself inside of you, usually around your lips, your mucal layers of your mouth, and it sneaks in there and it incorporates its DNA into your very own DNA without killing your cells. And when the conditions are just right, you get lots of sun, or you get lots of vitamin C or other nutrients that it needs, it will go ahead and tell its DNA to make more of it and to spread those viruses outward into the world. And how do you get this virus? Kissing. What's another way? Drinking other people's drinks. Exactly. Sharing sodas, sharing straws. Those are all excellent ways to get that. All right. The last one we'll talk about is rabies. What is rabies?
Animals have.
Gabriella?
I said animals have.
That's right. Animals get rabies. Now, when animals get rabies, it can be pretty severe. It's actually a death sentence for most animals. But some actually can go and survive long times with this disease without it actually harming them. This is why it's able to stay inside of the population and the wildlife. Right? Coochie, yeah, that old Stephen King novel and movie. Yeah. When you get rabies, rabies is actually really cool. What's really interesting about rabies is that rabies affects your mind. You know, do you guys know that back in the day, rabies had a different name? It used to be called hydrophobia. What does that mean, you think? Using your Latin knowledge. You're afraid of water. And sure enough, animals that have rabies, they are afraid of water. They don't drink water for days. And what that does is it causes them to salivate more. Where do you think you can find that virus? In their mouth. Inside of their saliva. It also makes them very aggressive, makes them want to bite anything that comes near them. And when this happens, what do you think it's doing? This is about helping the virus transmit itself to other animals around it. By having that virus inside of its saliva, making it want to bite other animals, this is encouraging that virus to spread around to other individuals. Now for rabies, when humans get it, it's very bad. Because there is not a cure for rabies after it's gotten into your body and you receive symptoms. When you have symptoms of rabies, it's a death sentence for you. But you can take these booster shots that help your immune system become aware of this virus so that you can hopefully survive it. In fact, I've read that you get that shot, you have a 90% chance of surviving.
Oh.
It's not bad, but still, it's not a 100% cure. That's why you always want to make sure you know that animal you got bit by didn't have rabies. In fact, I have a friend who got bit in the face by a dog, didn't know whose dog it was. Just to be safe, they had to give her rabies shots. 1 shot a day for a whole month. Because there is no cure once you show symptoms. Alright, what is the next pathogen? Fungi.
Mushrooms.
What do you think is one of the most common symptoms of having fungi? It's the most common disease. I'll give you a hint. Athletes tend to get this.
Athlete's foot.
That's right. Athlete's foot. Now, historically, humans have evolved to live without shoes, without socks, because that helped to go and allow lots of air to come on through. But now that we live in a modern society where people don't walk around barefoot, we've now actually made this beautiful micro-environment for fungi. They love living inside our nice, moist areas. If you don't keep your parts dry, it's going to happen.
Oh my God.
Yes. At first it itches, but then that fungi, if you don't take care of it, it will start to break into the living tissue and eat you alive. Really nasty. Who here has ever seen somebody with nails that just don't look quite right?